Bésame mucho, como si fuera esta noche la última vez. Bésame, bésame mucho, que tengo miedo perderte después.
If you speak Spanish, you'd understand those are very romantic lines. But you'll have to talk to me separately when to explain those things to you. It was written in 1940, the year I was born, and it's considered one of the most popular songs of all time, one of the most important musical pieces in the history of Latin music. It is the most recorded and covered song in Spanish of all time. It was recognized in 1999 as the most sung and recorded Mexican song in the world. That was the trio Los Panchos, both the original members and musicians who succeeded them, is regarded one of the top musical trios ever and one of the most influential artists who have sold out concerts over the globe and have appeared in more than 50 films in the past 70 years. So, there you have it. Let me go now to our program. Welcome to all Rotarians and guests. It's meeting number 5286. Our February birthdays are Bill Highlander, 1986, joined Rotary. He's a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, but he's retired. He was a communications executive. He last was, I think, with Calpine. Also, Sandra Madrigal joined us in 2019 she works at the Pro Bono Project Silicon Valley, and she trains executive directors. Leslie. So happy birthday to those two. Now we've got my buddy, the long-haired Greg Yoder, who's with, he joined us in 2003, and that's a pre-COVID picture we got there. And he's with Surefy Labs, a platform for the life insurance and annuity companies. He's going to give us his inspirational thought. Hit it, Greg.
Hola, amigos and amigas.
Hey, all right.
All right, greetings, Rotarians and guests. Rarely do I actually get excited when the Rotary office shares who our next Wednesday speaker is going to be. I know I should, but I don't. But when I got the announcement and read that Sister Marilyn Lacey was speaking today, I got excited for myself and really for all of us. And let me tell you why. Back in 1907, while a college freshman, I was in a Bible study where the leader challenged us to search the scriptures and find a life verse, one that we could make our own. And I took the challenge. And during my 2-week search, I came across James 1:27. And it says, religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. It became and has been my personal North Star for the last 43 years. Having this life verse, this North Star, has been a wonderful experience for me, and I've been able to bless a lot of widows and orphans along the way. And I'm forever indebted to the gentleman that inspired me to make that decision. It really helped me start living the Rotary motto, service above self, well before I became a Rotarian. So it's actually so important to me that it's etched in my wedding ring, and my wife supports me very much in this endeavor. Now, when I read about Sister Marilyn's background and her involvement in various ministries, I got excited for each one of us who will listen to her remarks today. And I'm hoping, believing, and yes, truly praying for all of us today that something Sister Marilyn says will trigger something in our hearts that will lead to action. A couple other verses from James before I close. In the book of James, it says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourself. Do what it says. And then lastly, show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith with my deeds. So I'm hoping we can all be inspired to do good deeds with the conversation and the presentation today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Greg. We, as Rotarians, do our very best to reach out to those who are less fortunate than we, and that's one of the mottos and one of the hallmarks of our club's service. Next, we have another one of those giving people, Ed Correa. He joined us in 2011, and that's a very attractive picture, I must say, Ed. He's with Sagacent Technologies. He helps us with our computer issues at the Rotary Club. He's the co-chair of the social media part of the social media and PR committee. And Ed, are you ready to go?
I am, but we have to get a newer photo of me. That one's like 20 some years old.
Well, at least you didn't spray your hair with any of that Gorilla Glue.
Yes. Anyway, folks, I'm here to talk to you about our what used to be the social media committee and is now the PR/social media committee. Next slide, John. So the mission of our club is of this committee is to share our information with our club members and now the press and the rest of the world. We want to make it easy for our club members to share information with their friends because we believe that's the best source of new members coming into our club. And we really need to share the good news about what our committees are doing and all our activities with the press. And so that's why we've merged the two groups. Next slide, please. So we use a lot of platforms, and I don't even have all the different newspapers and things that we should be sending our press articles to. But from the social media perspective, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Flickr, and Pinterest. What does that mean? It means a ton of work, and we need some help. So this is a plea to our membership to step up and say, hey, I'd like to help out with either the PR or the social media aspect of this committee. Next slide, John. So if you'd like to help, we'd like you to reach out. If you have experience in PR, please let me know. If you have some experience on even one social media platform and you'd like to help us out, reach out. My information is below. It's also on DACDB and in the guide. Mr. President, that's all I have today. I'll give you back an extra 2 minutes.
You have plenty of time to let us know. This is something that the committee chairs, all 50 committees, really should take heed to what you are providing us, and that is an opportunity to tell the story of what we do as Rotarians. One of the main gripes I have, stemming from when I joined in 1983, is very few people seem to know what the heck Rotary is or does. And that's really something that we need to rectify. And I think that the way to do it, and why I added the public relations part to the media, social media, is that while we have lots of people in our club who have background in public relations, there's never been a really successful effort of reaching out to tell the public what it is that we do. So I'm hoping that they will take you at your word, and that they'll call you up and tell you. And Dima Al-Natur, who's heading up the public relations part of it, but she's currently under the weather. She had an autoimmune reaction back. She's now in Tennessee during this COVID-19. She works for Apple. But between those two, you got information of what your committees are doing, let them know, send them pictures, and we can get that into the lots of different platforms. So thanks very much, Ed. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Next, we've got Sarah Janigan, or as I would call, Janigian. She's the Gala Committee co-chair along with Mauricio Cordova, but Sarah will give us an update on the Gala, and Nancy Williams will follow. She joined us in 2014. She's the founder of, I think it's Living Good or Liven Up, Liven Up or Living Up, I mean, she'll correct us, which does events to raise money for tickets to take low-income students to see live shows. And she's handling the Gala auction action. So she'll announce the winners of last week's Name That Dance contest. And Nancy and Sarah, are you guys on? Unmuted, of course.
I am unmuted. Welcome. Hi, everybody. Thank you, President Fernando. Hola, Rotarians.
Hey.
Last week, President Fernando has been calling me Janigian since I've
met.
met him years and years ago. So I let him get away with it. Thank you, Rotarians. And last week we revealed our theme for the 2021 Gala, Fiesta de Gala Rotaria, which will be held on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. Everybody has an opportunity to go and party on Cinco de Mayo. It will be a hybrid event held at History Park, a drive-through fiesta with food, entertainment. We do hope that COVID restrictions will loosen a bit to allow for picnic-style seating, but we will not know that for a while. So please stay tuned for announcements on that. We are looking forward to a very fun event. Tickets will go on sale next week, and they are $125 per person. Last week, we also had a dance contest, Name That Dance, with 5 dances, and the winner is Patrick Riley. So Patrick wins 2 tickets to the gala, and he answered the most correct answers. So congratulations, Patrick.
What were the names of those dances?
The names were, the first dance was the hustle, the second dance was the salsa, the third dance was West Coast swing, the fourth dance was the rumba, and the fifth dance was the cha-cha-cha. And I'd now like to just take a minute to acknowledge our sponsors that we have to date, and we are always grateful to these folks and grateful to those who sign up afterwards. We are more than willing to add to this list, so if you are interested in sponsoring the gala, please call Mauricio or I, Steve Prouty. We can all help you get your name on this list. As you can see, we have CoAmerica Bank returns as our featured cha-cha-cha sponsor. We have Block Construction, Kathy and Carl Silker, Heritage Bank of Commerce, the Ball Family Trust, Salas O'Brien, Tennis Getter Companies, Urban Catalyst, Valet Custom Cabinets and Closets, Carmen and Larry Stone, Live Freely, Bizzuto Insurance, Hogue Fenton, Hopkins Carley, Lexus of Stevens Creek, Loaves and Fishes, Miller, Morton, Collette, and Nevis, Samaritan Medical, Sandy and Dick Conniff, Tim Gill Law Office, Mission Valley Ford, Steve Stanowski, State Farm Insurance, Willoughby, Stewart, and Benning. And we have a few folks who are our in-kind sponsors who have signed up and have been helping us. Mike Bohr Graphics, Sean O'Kane Videography, Bert George. We know what Bert George does, wonderful things, including wine. And we have just had a really great response and hope that you will want to join us as well. So we look forward to seeing you all. Tickets go on sale next week, so please sign up. And I'm going to turn it over to Nancy.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. I just wanted everyone to know that we are in the donation drive now for auction items. So put on your thinking caps, think about what you might have, and be creative. I think what's great about the auction is it doesn't have to cost you anything. It's kind of a win-win. I mean, with COVID and not being able to entertain, I'll bet your wine cellar is way overstocked. Does your vacation home sit empty most of the time? Do you have hidden talent? I mean, some of the great things that people donated last year. Sarah Janigan baked cookies, chocolate chip cookies for somebody and delivered them every week. Was that not a great COVID gift? Heather Lerner auctioned off her BFF-dom for a week. Michelle Acosta donated her beautiful singing voice. Jason Minsky created a Christmas village. I mean, these were really creative items. We want more of those this year. One of the big hits were the gift baskets that were donated by our Rotary committees. We're soliciting those again this year, but you don't have to be a committee to donate a gift basket. They can be really fun to put together, and sometimes it's just things that you had around your house that you don't really want anymore. And again, don't forget about that overstocked wine cellar. So if you have something to donate, or if you have an idea on something that we could try to get ourselves, please send me an email, drop me an email at Nancy, that's Nancy with an I, at livenup, livenup.org. And that would be great. Thank you so much. And we're really hoping to have a great auction this year. Oh, and one thing I did want to add was that we did switch to a different software platform. So I know last year it was really difficult to see some of the items, particularly gift baskets and art items on your phone. But this year it's a laptop-based system. All of the images are going to be full screen. And I also want to thank the people who already have sent me auction items. I'll be following up with you in the next couple weeks. So thank you so much. And back to you, President Fernando.
Thanks very much, Sarah and Nancy. What we have now is the Blue Badgers, indicating they are done with the red badge drudgery and will collect their badges when we meet again in person. But for the time being, let's welcome them. Ellie Abijodi. Abijodi is a senior project engineer with AECOM, a U.S. engineering firm with 90,000 employees worldwide. Terry Harmon, she's a deputy DA with the County of Santa Clara. Corey Lambert, she is the senior event productions manager with Stewart Event Rentals, which merged with Williams Event Rentals, previously owned by former Rotarian Larry Williams and his wife, Marnie. Dominic Urrutia, he's a fundraiser for San Jose State Athletics Department, and Sharon Whaley with San Jose Water Company. Now, ordinarily, if we were all meeting in person, you would have received a standing ovation. But as it is, the best we can do is wave our hands on screen. Thanks and congratulations for making it through your first year, guys. Welcome, Blue Badgers. All right, next one we have. It's my time, and I'm going to talk a little bit about an action that your board of directors took yesterday. You know, I've been a member of this club since 1983, and I have always been really impressed with the generosity of our Rotarians. But more than that, I've been impressed with the generosity of non-Rotarians who every year seem to give us a philanthropic boost for us and are always so wonderful to us. And so I thought we should recognize these people. Maybe that'll encourage others to be equally magnanimous. And so I recommended, and the board approved unanimously, what is a club policy, and that is that we would have a Rotary International Honorary Rotarian. And that is a person who meets criteria of having been very generous financially and generous with their time as a volunteer, but specifically to this club, not just to Rotary, not just to the world around them. This is not for my buddies or future president's buddies. It's for people who meet those criteria. They meet the four-way test and they are generous and significantly so. And so they have agreed that this would go along. Let me tell you, or let me read it to you so that you'll understand it. You should have received a copy of that. Oh, maybe you didn't. I think that may have gone just to the board. Anyways, the Rotary Club proposes a club policy conferring the honor and designation as a Rotary International Honorary Rotarian to non-Rotarians, an individual or a maximum of 2 people, who have provided exemplary and significant financial and or volunteer services to the Rotary Club of San Jose. And if the circumstances so warrant, the award may be offered once in a year by nomination of the club president and approval of the club's board of directors. That's key. If the club board of directors does not approve it, then it doesn't get done. And it's not intended to be issued annually. Rather, it's subject to the board's approval. There's no limit, but maximum would be 2 people in case there's a couple or a combination too. The honoree will get a Paul Harris Fellowship with a pin, which will come out of the pocket of the president's fund. Every president every year gets a certain amount of money, and they try to help the club in various ways. And so that would be coming from the fund for the president, so for that Rotary International pin. And it would be presented in what I wrote down as a dignified ceremony in front of the full membership, virtual or in person, as the time will tell. These people who are honored in this way hold no Rotary office. They have no classifications. They're not included in the official count of our Rotary Club, and they shall not be billed. No dues will be charged to them, no fees. And they receive the usual Rotary Club-wide emails and information, including the weekly bulletins. They are invited to attend and participate in our Rotary Club activities at their cost. And they'll be listed in our annual membership directory under the category of Rotary International Honorary Members. We also will provide them with a 1-year subscription to Rotary, the clubs, or the Rotary Clubs magazine. And but I will announce, or we will announce to the club generally, the names of the nominees, 1 or 2 nominees, at the Cinco de Mayo festivities. We're going to meet on Wednesday at regular Wednesday meeting at noon, and that's when we'll disclose or identify the recipients of this first ever honorary Rotarian award. Now, we have an honorary Rotary membership given to the mayor of the city of San Jose, which is what got me thinking that we ought to recognize people who are really terrific to us and that are doing something for our club. And I thought this was a great way to do it, and I'm hoping that this can become something that other subsequent presidents might agree to do on their own. But I leave it up to them. And this is just a club policy, subject to change according to need. The other one is we had a joint personnel committee that was not mentioned yesterday in our meeting, and I should have said that. The Joint Personnel Committee is set up. This was discussed back in 2019, but because of COVID, it just got lost in all the activities of COVID-19. And so we've thanks to Vince Sinceri, we reinstituted this, and now we have a joint personnel committee to do an annual evaluation of our executive director and to handle any issues that might come up between members and our Rotary staff, or having to do with Rotary. That's something we did not have when we lost our last executive director before Leslie came on, and we saw the need to have such a committee. I don't expect that it'll be real busy because I expect Leslie to provide the wonderful services that she has been providing up to date, and our wonderful Rotary staff and the work that they do. But that's been taken care of. We'll have alternate nominations each year for people from the board of directors of the club and the board of trustees from the foundation, and the president of the club and the president of the foundation will be part of that committee to sit and do the evaluation. So that, I'm very pleased that we got that out of the way. It should have been done a couple of years ago, but we didn't do it. Finally, there's a survey that was sent out to you, and I'm asking everyone to please return that survey to me. I've asked because we're not meeting in person, so I can't really gauge how you guys are receiving what is being presented to you. For example, do you like this musical genre that I've been introducing at the start of the meetings? Do you like the fact that I've been bringing in city council members and supervisors from the board of supervisors from the county to tell us a little bit about themselves? I thought it was important that we did that rather than just hearing from the mayor. Tell us what you think, whether you like the time allotted for reports, the inspirational thought, the use of fine opportunities as opposed to punishing you with fines. So anyway, take a look at that survey that was sent out to every one of you, and I would appreciate it, as would our staff, if you would respond to that, because that'll help me certainly shape up the balance of my year, which ends June 30th of this year. So I want to give you the best kind of service as I can. Now we've got, as you know, we were provided with flags by Shelley McNamara. She went out and bought 500 flags, and then several of us volunteered to distribute them. And We did that in advance so that people could celebrate President's Day, so that we could say that this flag belongs to all of us, not to any one particular party, but to all of us. And we should be proud to show that flag, not just on President's Day, but on Memorial Day, on Flag Day, which is June 14th, I believe, 4th of July, Veterans Day. I mean, there's lots of opportunities for us to tell the world that we Rotarians are truly proud to be Americans, and that flag would help us. Did you have that flag video, John? Well, as an immigrant, I can tell you I'm very proud to have participated in that distribution, and thanks to Shelley McNamara, past President Karen Sinanu, Tari, and the members of our Fun and Friendship Committee for distributing these flags. And those that, some that were left over, will continue to distribute them to neighbors and friends and family. So thank you, everyone. Next, we've got Catherine Cook, who's in Park City, Utah. Says she's got a little bit of snow going on over there. And she's going to introduce our keynote speaker for today, our program speaker. She's a member of the International Services Committee. And Catherine, are you with us?
I am. I'm right here.
Okay, go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce Sister Marilyn Lacey as today's speaker. Sister Marilyn and I met last fall through a mutual friend and instantly connected over our shared passion for creating educational opportunities in areas of extreme poverty. Sister Marilyn has worked with displaced people since 1981, when she first taught English in a UN refugee camp in Thailand. Other ministries followed, including high school teaching, organizational development, and 2 decades with Catholic Charities in San Jose as Director of Refugee and Immigration Services. She was personally honored by the Dalai Lama in 2001 as an unsung hero of compassion. She holds a master's degree in social welfare from UC Berkeley, as well as 4 honorary doctorates. And in 2017, she received an unsolicited $1 million cash prize for her faith-inspired leadership from the Opus Foundation to support her work. Sister Marilyn founded and serves as the executive director of Mercy Beyond Borders, a nonprofit working with women and girls in the villages of South Sudan and Malawi, refugee camps in Uganda and Kenya, and in the rural mountains of Haiti to alleviate their extreme poverty. Her memoir, This Flowing Toward Me, A Story of God Arriving in Strangers, was published in 2009. Please join me in welcoming Sister Marilyn Lacey to San Jose Rotary. Uh-oh.
There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you especially to President Zazueta and Catherine Cook for this opportunity to be with you. I think I'm going to be preaching to the choir, but that's good too. After listening to Greg's reflection, I think we're already on the same page. I would like to share my screen if that's possible. So hold on a sec. I wish I were as tech savvy as some other people here. There we go. Okay, I'm here today to talk with you about what I call the surprising path to joy. And you should know that my basic stance toward life really is that it doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what you practice. So whatever ethnicity, nationality, background, faith tradition or not you belong to, that diversity is wonderful. But what counts at the end of life is how you practiced, what your gifts were, how you shared with the world. So I would love to be talking to you about Mercy Beyond Borders and the really groundbreaking work we're doing with women and girls in places of extreme poverty, like the war zone in South Sudan, et cetera. But if I did that, you'd be here till midnight. So I am going to instead share with you what I think is a proven path to joy, and a surprising one. Maybe you'll see by the end of this 30 minutes. It's very simple. This is not rocket science. Be attentive, be welcoming, be bred. Let's take each of those in turn. What do I mean when I say be attentive? About 1,000 years ago, a Celtic monk wrote this prayer, and I think it's really timely for the 21st century. May I arrive at every place I enter. This is a really tough one for me, and probably for most Americans who own a cell phone. May I actually be where I am? What a challenge. Can I keep my attention on the present moment, the person whom I might be interacting with right now? That's attentiveness, and it is a very elusive, difficult, challenging practice. It takes people a lifetime usually to even get to moments of true attentiveness. But I have met people who are very attentive, and it has changed my life. I'm going to share some stories with you. This is a true story from the life of the author of The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Everybody knows he was a writer. That's what he's famous for, but he was also a pilot. He was a pilot back in the 1920s and 30s when flying was exotic and still dangerous. And he used to fly from France, where he lived, to North Africa to deliver the mail to the colonies once a week. And one time he was flying, he encountered this vast fog bank, and he got completely disoriented and he crashed in the Sahara. You see the picture of his plane there. And he would have died of his injuries, except that a caravan of strangers, Bedouin, happened to be passing by. They saw this plane fall out of the sky. They went to investigate. They found him and they welcomed him. They took him with them to their encampment and took care of him, nursed him and fed him and cared for him until he was well. So he tried to figure out, well, what shall I do to thank these people? They saved my life. You know, they're Muslim, I'm Christian. It didn't seem to matter. This is an amazing thing. So he got this idea. Remember, he was a colonial Frenchman, huh? So this is kind of a passé idea. But at the time, he thought the best thing I could do for them is bring them to Paris and let them see the wonders of French civilization. So he did. He brought several chiefs over to France with him. And he showed them the Champs-Élysées and the Eiffel Tower and, you know, steam trains, all these marvelous things. And they were kind of interested, but not impressed. And the next day, he decided he would take them to the French Alps. And he took them to see a waterfall. Smart move, because these guys were from the Sahara Desert. And believe me, they had never seen a waterfall. They were stunned by the extravagance. This water, this stuff of life, pouring out of a mountain endlessly. So they just stared at it. They were enraptured. And after a couple of hours, Saint-Exupéry says, you know, guys, we got to get back to town. It's going to be nightfall. And they said, absolutely not. We cannot leave until it stops. And he had a very hard time convincing them that it wasn't going to stop, that it had been flowing for 10,000 years and would continue probably to do so. The idea that there could be so much extravagance flowing toward them was just, they had no word for it. Shortly after reading that story, I stumbled into the poetry of the Sufi mystics, Muslim tradition. And this one, I was age 59 at the time I discovered this poem, talks about attentiveness. It says, "For 60 years I have been forgetful every minute, yet not for a second has this flowing toward me stopped or slowed." This flowing toward me, like the waterfall or a river or the constant blessings and experiences that are flowing to you every single day, every moment. And yet we are often not paying attention and we miss them. The Bedouin did not miss them. And we can learn to become more attentive ourselves. Let me give you an amazing example that happened to me in Juba, the capital of South Sudan. This was a few years ago. It was my first trip to Juba, which I liken to San Francisco in the gold rush days, kind of chaotic without the sheriff. And I was supposed to meet a professional colleague. Since I had never been there, he said, well, let's meet at the Bedouin Bar and Hotel. Everybody knows where it is. So, okay, so I'm standing at 6 p.m. in front of the Bedouin Bar and Hotel by myself. It's very, very hot in South Sudan, dusty, the roads are not paved. And it's 6 o'clock, comes and goes. My friend never shows up. Turns out he had car trouble. But I'm getting a little bit anxious. It's getting dark. A couple of motorcycles zoom by and trucks and things. And then all this red dust kicks up. And so now I'm not just sweaty, I'm covered with red dust. I've got a big straw hat on against the sun and sunglasses. And this blue van drives by quite quickly and then stops and kicks into reverse and comes back until it's right in front of me. And I can see there is a very large African man at the driver's wheel. And I'm a little nervous now because I've figured out by watching the Bedouin Bar that it's probably also a brothel. And here I am, the lonely nun standing at dusk in front of, and this guy comes right up to me and he rolls down the window. He goes, "I know you, you're Sister Marilyn." And I thought, shoot, I have no idea who this guy is, except he looks very large to me. And I said, well, I am Sister Marilyn, but how do you know me? And he said, we met in Kakama camp in 1998. Now that was years and years ago, and in another country, Kenya. I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm John. That didn't help me at all. And then all of a sudden, something clicked in my memory. I said, are you John Bolen Alir? And he said, yes. He jumped out of the car, grabbed me in this big bear hug, twirled me around and said, I have been looking for you for 12 years. I was so stunned. I still get, my hairs kind of get prickly when I tell this story, because he was a 12-year-old boy when I met him in that refugee camp. I met him for only 1 hour. The camp was 7 miles long. It had 120,000 people in it. And I was just walking along one day with a notepad to write down my impressions of things. And he sort of attached himself to my elbow. He wanted to practice English. So we had a conversation. I asked him about his life, how he became a refugee, where were his parents, what did he want to become? And then we said goodbye. But before he left, he said, can I write my name in your journal? So that's how it stuck. We had this amazing reunion 12 years later when he was 24. He's a UN driver. I said, John, how in the world did you recognize me? It's dusk. I've got a hat on. It's 12 years later. It's a different country. He said, I would never forget your kindness or your face. Why? It's not a story about me. It's a story about him. about his attentiveness. He told me, he said, I drive all over East Africa for the UN, and everywhere I go, I am looking for you. He knew I lived in America. I told him that. But imagine that kind of attentiveness. And we had the happiest of reunions. So that's what it means to be attentive, I can tell you. If you don't mind name dropping, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my day with the Dalai Lama, my date with the Dalai Lama. This was way back, but it was in San Jose in 2001. And I was among a group of people that was honored. So it was just a great day because I love refugees. I've spent my life working with refugees. And it was an honor to be with him and learn from him. If you want to know somebody who is truly compassionate and very joyful, it's the Dalai Lama. So the next, I don't want to tell you about that day. I want to tell you about the next morning, what happened to me. I get up, I make my meditation, I go have breakfast. I pull out the Mercury News, of course, to start my day. And I open it up and there's this picture in color in the Mercury News. I thought, wow, that is so cool. My mother will love it. So I'm driving to work down to San Jose to Catholic Charities and I stop to get gas, ordinary thing. And I'm thinking about the Dalai Lama. So I start to drive away from the gas station and I hear this noise. And I look in the rearview mirror, you know what I'm going to see, the gas pump hose twirling away from my vehicle and spewing petrol everywhere. I am just horrified. How did I be so thoughtless? Well, because I was not paying attention, right? I was dreaming about the Dalai Lama. So I stop the car, I grab my purse, and I figure I'm going to have to pay for the damage or whatever. So as I'm doing that, I see this little man, about 5 feet tall, running out from the booth toward me, and he does not look happy. He's going like this. What in the world? It's you. And he makes this profound bow toward me. I'm thinking, what is going on here? Turns out he was Tibetan. He was reading the Mercury News in the booth, and he saw this picture. And I was wearing the same jacket that I had been wearing to the event. So he recognized me. And I said, oh, sir, I am so sorry I messed up your gas station. He said, no, it is an honor that you come to my place of work. I'm like, I'm not getting it. I said, sir, how can we fix this problem here? You know, you're going to have to sweep up all this petrol. I'm going to have to give you my insurance card. Where do you want to start? He said, no, only one thing, please. May I touch you? Then I got it. He's Tibetan. The Tibetans believe the Dalai Lama is the incarnation of the divine. And he knew from the picture that the Dalai Lama had touched me. We had embraced. So he believed that if this gas station guy believed, if he could touch me, through me, he could touch the divine. Isn't that profound? And it doesn't just apply to the Dalai Lama. It applies to all of us. Our path to God is through one another, because that spark of the divine is in each of us. So this is a story about the gas station attendant being attentive, right? Because we have a choice what we are attentive to. Problems, hassles, people who get in our way, which I was doing to him, or the blessings that are equally present in every situation, good, bad, or indifferent. And he chose to look at the blessing of touching the divine through me. That was just so awesome, what I learned from that guy. That's what it means to be attentive. And I can tell you, it brings you joy. It really brings you joy. So the second thing, be welcoming. Wow, this is a really tough one for Americans. Being welcoming is not part of our DNA. And you don't know how deficient we are until you get into the rest of the world and look at cultures that are really hospitable. So that's been a great blessing to me, working in many other places. The Hebrew tradition says that Abraham's tent was open on all four sides. That's beautiful. Especially, think about it. How many of us live in gated communities? How many of us don't talk to strangers? How many of us, hospitality only means inviting over the people who've invited you? That's not hospitality. I really learned about hospitality from welcoming other people. It didn't come naturally to me. I used to think of hospitality as something, that I would do for somebody else. But in fact, as this Kenyan proverb says, it's the guest coming into your life who brings the healing to you, to us. So we, the hosts, who think we are the richest people in the world, will actually learn by becoming more welcoming. And I didn't learn this growing up. I learned it in 1980 when a refugee family from Laos, a Hmong family, no one in the US in 1980 spoke Hmong, certainly none of us sisters. And for a variety of kind of tragic reasons, they couldn't, they came as refugees to San Francisco airport and then couldn't go on to their sponsoring community in the Midwest because the father became very ill, hospitalized, and then jailed. So the sisters took in the 5 children, and they stayed with us for all of Lent, just by happenstance. That's how it timed itself, for 6 weeks in 1980. And it completely transformed this convent, in our Mother House convent in Burlingame, and me especially. And when they finally became well enough to travel, they left us, I felt really sad. I was a high school teacher at the time, and I thought, dang, I really miss those kids, And I had a dream about them one night, an actual dream, And in the dream, I was on outside my classroom, and I saw these 5 kids, this is the 4 oldest, come running up to me. And I dropped my books and I shouted at them. I said, "What are you doing here?" And they came running to me. And the little guy, who's named Jai, he said, "We're here to teach you a new way of loving." And I woke up right at that moment. The dream was crystal clear in my mind. And I decided to leave teaching and go and work with refugees. The best decision I ever made in my life, because I left a situation where I was always in control, confined classroom, one answer to everything. I taught mathematics. I had no risk in my life whatsoever. I ended up a couple of weeks later flying off to the wilds of the Laotian Thai border and living a year without knowing the language, understanding what I was eating, being in control of absolutely anything in my life. But I was welcomed by those people, and I welcomed them into my heart. And it really made me a happy person. I have to say, it changed my life again for the better. So when and where you have the opportunity, be welcoming. It's a path to joy. The third and last point is be bread. We think of bread as nourishment, right? However, that form that takes. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. Think a minute about your own life. How much of your life have you spent creating a safe cocoon, right? For yourself, for your family, for your work environment. And how much have you spent of your life taking risks, moving outside of that comfort zone to be attentive to strangeness and to welcome in people who are other than yourself? Examine your practice in that regard, because I think happiness is on the latter path. It's on moving beyond whatever borders we are comfortably within. A friend of mine visited India a couple of years ago, and she said on the way from the airport to the downtown where she was going to stay, there was a billboard beside the highway. And this was the slogan: "Come and stay in our big new condominium tower. You'll never have to hear your neighbor again." And this was conceived of as a good thing. You will never have to hear your neighbor. Well, if you've ever lived in a poor place or visited a slum, you know there is no quiet, there is no privacy, there is none of the things we value so much. But think about that question. Do you want to live in a way where you never hear the cries of your neighbor? I hope not. And I'm a sister of mercy. Mercy is the willingness to enter into the chaos of another. So you don't try to war they were experiencing. And I went up after his talk and just said to him, could you tell me more about the suffering of your people? And he just said, come and see. So I said, okay, I will. I'll leave out all the long story of how the bleep I thought I was going to get there without any money, without any connections in Africa, et cetera. But anyway, it all worked out and I got there and this is what I saw. It was horrific. It was just unbelievable. And again, it changed me. And I knew I needed to do something for the suffering people of Sudan. It's why I started my nonprofit, Mercy Beyond Borders. But when you enter into that kind of chaos by choice, again, I'm thinking of a Rumi poem, and I'm almost finished. Become the one who, when you walk into a room, walk into a situation, walk into a job, walk into a family, whatever, become the one, choose it, that when you walk in someplace, luck, or I would say blessing, shifts to whoever needs it most. So you're the loser, It shifts elsewhere. Even if you've not been fed, and we're not coping with starvation ourselves, but there are ways we're not feeling fed, when you're passed up for a promotion or you're hurt by somebody or whatever. You can still choose to be bread for others. By not clinging to what you have, by letting those blessings flow through you to whoever needs it most. And then this most amazing thing happens. This is me in a refugee camp in northern Uganda. And again, the words of Rumi are true for me. I do not know who lives here inside me or why the joy, the smile comes. I'm not myself. Something greater is moving through me, flowing through me. And actually, this poem goes on to say, I'm not myself. I am more like a ruined rose after all the petals have been tossed off. And yet the joy comes. I'll finish with a question from my friend Anyuan, who's from South Sudan. He was 20 years old when he came to the US, and he had to get some minor surgery. Then the day before he was coming to the hospital, going to go to the hospital, he called me that night. And he said, sister, can you help me? I have a problem. I said, yeah, I know you're going to surgery. Are you scared? No, he said, I'm not scared. I said, well, then what's on your mind? He said, well, the doctor told me that when I come to the hospital tomorrow, he's going to ask me to sign a paper about donating my heart. Well, he knew nothing about organ donation permissions, and so I realized he was misunderstanding the situation. But he said to me, sister, why would I give my heart to a stranger? And he was really wrestling with it. He thought he was going to die. And there's only one answer. Why would you give your heart to a stranger? It's because that's the kind of prodigal love that we're all called to, that Rotary stands for, and that ultimately brings joy, unexpected joy, a joy that is full and complete. So be bread, be attentive, be welcoming, be bread. I think you'll find joy growing in your hearts. Thank you.
Are you available to answer your questions, sister?
Absolutely.
All right. Do we have anyone from the program committee?
Fernando, I'm here in this is Jenny in Suzanne's stead today, and I did gather some questions, sister, if you wouldn't mind. We would love to get your thoughts. What a beautiful presentation. Let's see. Okay, so one of the questions that we had, actually a couple of times, is how do we, if our path to God is through one another, how do we find our paths to each other in this incredibly divided world and develop qualities of presence, compassion, and connection to ourselves and others?
What a great question. If I had the answer to that, I'd probably be on CNN or whatever, right? We're all searching for that.
You should be on CNN. I think we would all agree.
Well, thank you for that. You're very attentive. I think that it starts in small ways and it starts close to home. I have 4 brothers, and the wife of one of them is very strong Trump supporter. and I'm at the other end of the spectrum. And I tried to talk with her about it, but it's very challenging. But one of the things I did was ask her if she was afraid of something. And she admitted right away, I am absolutely afraid. My grandchildren are going to have to live under Sharia law. Well, she's never met a Muslim. I asked her. She's terrified of them. And she told me all of them are terrorists. Okay, well, what do you do with that? First of all, just to acknowledge that she has these fears. I don't know where they're coming from, conspiracies, theories, or whatever, but it's not from direct experience because she hasn't met a Muslim. So the next night I invited one of my dear Muslim friends, actually happens to be a Sufi, to dinner, and she was there. And we had a wonderful dinner together. Of course, I didn't introduce him as a Muslim. This is my friend Reza. And he told stories, and she was just so enamored of him. And then she left. She lives in the Midwest. So the next time I see her, when she's out in California, I'm going to remind her about this wonderful guy that she met, and she just enjoyed him so much. And I'm going to say, that was your first Muslim. Because you know, I'm blessed enough that I've had these kinds of experiences. So the fears just drop away. Yeah. But when we isolate in our cocoons, which, as we know, the media isn't reinforcing, it gets harder and harder to bridge those divides. And ultimately, that's what war is about. I see it every day in South Sudan when I'm there. Tribal divisions, which very easy for us to say, oh, the tribes are all in Africa. No way. The tribes are right here. They're in our families and they're in the Congress, and it is leading us toward disaster. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, I have some other questions. So I think we have time for at least one more. And that question is, and it's a local question, that from someone who, you know, spends time at the Guadalupe River Trail, Cody Creek, even downtown, and been very overwhelmed lately with just the increase in the amount of folks that are living outside in encampments, and the squalor, and the extreme lack of poverty we see. How do you think about this incredible, overwhelming need, and where would you begin?
You guys ask tough questions. Let me just go back to my days at Catholic Charities when I was welcoming refugees from around the world. And these people have been through hell and back. Many had been tortured or traumatized. They'd lived in refugee camps. The average stay in a refugee camp now is 20 years. You know, it's staggering. Okay, so these refugees come, they have nothing. Catholic Charities was helping them to resettle, give them transition housing, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know what shocks them most? Seeing homeless people. They are they can't imagine that a place like America, as rich as it is, would have homeless. And unfortunately, we are no longer shocked by it. We're just annoyed by it. We see it, you know, as a problem that won't go away. A couple of days ago, Sunday, in the New York Times, I read an article about the current refugee crisis in northern Ethiopia, where the government of Ethiopia is apparently coming down horribly hard and with its military on a tribe that lives in the northwest. So these Ethiopians that are being harassed are fleeing into neighboring Sudan. The Ethiopians are Christian. The Sudanese in that part are all Muslim. And the Muslim villagers on the border are taking in, they live in mud huts themselves, they are taking in these refugees. And they say, we're doing it for Allah. These are our neighbors. Of course we would house them. We would share our water with them. And everything is very scarce. So I go back and forth between these two worlds. I'm in the poverty-stricken parts of Haiti, in the refugee camps in northern Uganda, in the villages of Sudan, South Sudan. The poverty is incredible, and yet you do not see homeless. So there is something deeply wrong with our value structure, with our mental health care system, with I don't know. This is not my field of expertise, but I think it boils down to the fact that our society has an extremely shallow understanding of hospitality and caring for the neighbor, especially when the neighbor is strange. We don't understand them. We don't speak the same language, maybe, or we don't have the same values.
Yeah.
Well, let me interrupt for just a moment, Jenny, and you can continue after I close the formal part of this meeting because we have a 1:15 cutoff time.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Sister Lacey. The program for Mercy Beyond Borders and the Path to Joy. Wonderful messages, judging from all the chat comments. You started Mercy Beyond Borders in 2008, helped displace women and children overseas. Congratulations, you picked up $1 million you weren't expecting. I bet you know that you're going to be able to spend it. You know where to spend it.
You got that right.
We made a contribution on your behalf and on behalf of all our program speakers to Our City Forest, a nonprofit which will plant 46 shade trees in East San Jose to combat heat islands, climate change, and improve our neighborhoods. We give Catholic Charities, the Rotary Club did, a van so that you can go out and meet the needs of a lot of
great.
people who are not being met because they're afraid to come in and afraid to deal with the government. So next week, we've got a speaker by the name of Jeff Lee Fisher. He'll be speaking on the Electoral College. He's the dean of both the Cleveland Marshall College of Law and the Levin College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University. He's also an urban scholar for the College of Urban Planning and Public Affairs in the Great Cities Institute for the University of Illinois in Chicago. Before that, he was a state representative, a senator, attorney general, and lieutenant governor of the state of Ohio. So we might say he's got a pretty broad experience of political issues regarding the Electoral College. So recently, he and his wife, Peggy Zone Fisher, were the first couple to receive the 2021 Award for Excellence in Community Leadership and Engagement by the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Foundation. And as a former lawyer, I can tell you that's a big deal. So listen, to paraphrase my favorite immigrant governor, hasta la vista, Rotarians. This is normally stands adjourned, and we're going back to Sister Marilyn Lacey and Jenny Nicholas, who's handling all the questions. Go ahead, Jenny.
Thank you.
And thank you again, Sister Lacey. Speaking more specifically to issues related to refugees, we had a question about how would you advise President Biden on the issue of refugees? What would you tell him?
Well, I think, the great divide about refugees, first of all, there's a huge misconception that the American government takes all the refugees every year. Actually, less than 0.5% of refugees are ever resettled anywhere in a wealthy country. We do take the lion's share of the ones that are resettled, Canada, Australia, and the US. Under the president who preceded Biden, our refugee welcome went down almost to zero. And care for refugees is a humanitarian and faith issue, I believe, but it's also a political one. We take refugees to ease the pressure points in the neighboring countries that are accepting refugees. So I would advise Biden to move us back in the direction of being more compassionate. And I would also advise the American public that refugees, though they may be a drain on the economy in terms of healthcare and education for a few years, very quickly become contributing members. They're younger, they're entrepreneurial, they're survivors, they work really hard. So in the long term, as our country ages, if we don't have solid flow of new blood, immigrants and refugees, we will regret it. And countries like Germany and Japan, which are aging rapidly and have not accepted refugees, they're beginning to regret that. They don't have a young workforce anymore.
Thank you. Yeah, very interesting. Appreciate that. This sort of leads into the last question that I have is, What is the best way for us as individuals to deepen or develop qualities of presence, compassion, and connection, both to our personal selves, but also to others, to demonstrate some of what you've spoken about today?
Thank you. Well, I think, we can't give what we don't have. If we're not slowing down enough to be a little bit attentive to our own issues, our own projections, our own fears, then we can't be attentive and welcoming to other people. So, in California, we're very aware of the self-development and all of that. But I would approach it, my bias, of course, is meditation and reflection and looking at whom to emulate, whose life do you want flowing through you. And for me, as a follower of Jesus, but there are many other people too. That bishop who invited me to South Sudan is like the Mother Teresa of East Africa. He's a remarkable man. There are people in your lives that can teach you how to be attentive, whether it's a gas station attendant, or a 12-year-old boy in a refugee camp named John. I learned it from others. I'm very introverted. I did not learn to become welcoming naturally. I learned it from others, mostly from the refugees. So I think we have to care for our own self-development in terms of not being sucked into the values of our culture.
Yeah.
You'll never have to hear or bother with or care about your neighbors anymore. That's a problem over there. That's far away. Well, of course, we know that's not true. You can't build a wall against pandemics, for one thing.
Yeah.
So, we need to care for ourselves. We need to pay attention to who our heroes are and whom we want to emulate. And then as you become attentive and more self-reflective, it's like you begin to notice what is flowing toward you in your life. Yeah. And the Sufis say, your life is like a house, and every morning there are new guests coming in. So even if they're coming in to destroy your furniture and flood you out, welcome them. They might be clearing you out for something better. Yeah. I mean, everything, it's where you put your attention. And so I actually, when I wrote my book, which is just a bunch of stories about what I've learned from the refugees, I titled it "This Flowing Toward Me." It's like, it's nothing I even did. It just started coming toward me, and you become more aware and more contemplative, I think, about cherishing what is coming through and then not clinging to it, but letting it flow through you. That's the being bread for others.
You're making me think of Rumi quite a lot, and I so appreciate your connection to that. This being human is a guest house is one of the beautiful poems that he has written. And so I thank you so much for that, because I think noticing the small miracles that are around us all day are the things that allow us to be attentive, to things. And so thank you so much. I don't have any other formal questions. And so
let's ask our Rotarians out there. Maybe others have been thinking and would like to have some questions submitted. So if you are, speak up, because you don't have to be formal here. The sister knows about informality.
I do. I've lived in mud huts.
Well, while we're waiting for somebody to speak up, I remember my wife and I spent a year traveling around Europe in a VW camper. We were young, recently married, and we lived in this camper and we cooked in it and traveled around. And I was overwhelmed by the welcomingness that we received everywhere we went. And I have to tell you, my wife probably wouldn't appreciate this. She was always the one putting out the brakes. We can't go there. We don't know them. Listen, you can't just barge in. But I always did, and I was always rewarded by some wonderful hospitality, wonderful people that were very warm, very welcoming. So you're right. It's harder to do here because many of our people here do not travel. They don't have the same experiences that travel does in broadening your own understanding of life. So you're right. It's not something that's in our DNA. So I think Arthur Weisbrot is got a hand up. So Judge, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, though. Arthur, are you with us? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I apologize. I understand that so few of these refugees find homes, and part of it is that they don't find countries that will take them.
Right.
But how much does it cost to set somebody up in one of these very poor countries? By set somebody up, I mean have them have enough money to have a house and get a start. And is really the solution for these millions of refugees to bring them to the developed
No.
countries, or is it to give them enough money and training as to how to use the money so that they can set themselves up in one of these countries, either where they're from or where they've arrived to, so they can live above a poverty line lifestyle?
Arthur, you are really on the right track. And I would back it up even further than giving them lodging and all of that in the country where they fled. I would back it up to the country they came from.
Sure.
If we can do the right things in terms of educating women, for example, which is my thing, there wouldn't be as many wars and there wouldn't be as much need to flee, at least for the reasons that refugees are fleeing now. It's mostly war and persecution. So if you can fix the problem upstream, that is the best thing. That's kind of idealistic. So, okay, we have these refugee flows. There are more refugees now in the world than there have ever been in history. Only one country am I aware of globally that allows refugees to stay permanently, and that is Uganda. A quite small country, actually, has over 1.25 million refugees right now. And it, for years and years and years, has allowed the refugees to have a tiny plot of land, 200 feet square, and to build their own hut and to stay there. And they become part of the Ugandan community over time. That is the next best solution. We can't stop the wars back home. The third, and not preferred by anybody, including the refugees themselves, is to go to what is called a third country, like America or Canada. I remember very much in my first refugee camp on the Mekong River between Laos and Thailand, a young adult refugee saying to me, who would ever want to leave the country of his birth? You know, we Americans, we're very mobile, move around, all that. Refugees and other cultures are not like that. They are rooted to the land. It kills them to have to flee. They do it for survival and their children's survival. But mostly the places they flee to do not welcome them. So it's not a matter of giving them money. They're not allowed to stay.
But would they be allowed to stay if they came self-sufficient? See, if they came with enough money to buy a house and get food.
There's too much politics involved, because with every refugee flow, the borders are very dangerous, and it's assumed that rebels and others infiltrate into the host country with the normal refugees and cause problems. And it is true. It's true. So it's very destabilizing, and most host countries do not want refugees there. Kenya has had Somalis on its border 40 years and won't even allow them to go to college. You know, and the quality of education inside the camps is very poor. So these are just wasted lives. So the solution is for the 0.5% to get to come to a country like America, the rest to become educated and then stay in their countries to work for change. What works against that is the levels of corruption, which I can't even begin to explain to you. But we're working, Mercy Beyond Borders is working in the refugee camps forever. For example, we are teaching women to start businesses, little micro enterprise businesses that make the difference between life and death sometimes, because it gives them money to put their kids in school and gives them money to buy medicine when they're sick, when they get malaria, whatever. They're the ones that are going to have to solve the problems, not us.
Our International Services Committee is working on several of those topics.
Right.
You mentioned the small loans to help them set up businesses, and helping to drill water to provide potable
Yeah.
water for villages. So our International Services Committee really is our hand into the world out there now. David Ginsburg, you've got a hand up.
Fernando, can I interrupt for just a second? There's been a couple requests for if Sister would share her slides with the group. And so I'm just want to be sure I ask that in case we get
No,
lost.
sure. That's
Okay.
not a problem at all.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I think that would probably be something that John During can help us with, I'm sure. David, back to David Ginsburg.
Yeah, my question was, we've actually, our family has hosted a refugee and her son, and we were involved with an organization in DC called Mary House. Bill and Sharon Murphy. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I have.
Yeah, they do great work. We've been decades-long supporters and
Good for you.
working with them. Are there any other programs like that here locally, like what they do? I've not seen any in the Bay Area that does what they do.
For 21 years, I did it.
Oh, really?
Catholic Charities in San Jose. I left there to start to write my book and then to start Mercy Beyond Borders. There's a system. The State Department controls refugee migration, and they subcontract with national level organizations to do the actual welcoming, housing, teaching of English, etc. In the San Jose region, it was always Catholic Charities, the International Rescue Committee, known as IRC, and Church World Service and Jewish Family Service in Los Gatos. However, for the last 4 or 5 years, there have been almost no refugees coming in at all. And the high cost of living here means that these national agencies are usually loath to assign the families to come to the Bay Area. Because if they send them to Mississippi, they're going to pay $200 a month for an apartment instead of $2,000. So there was only a trickle for the last 7 or 8 years. However, that may be shifting again. And when it does, groups like the VOLAGs, the voluntary agencies that I mentioned, rely on churches and families to step up because it's an overwhelming, the State Department gives you 90 days of support. It's something like about $800 per refugee. That's it.
Interesting.
Goodbye, stay well and, thrive. So when I was at Catholic Charities, I started one of those car, give your old junker and resell it. And I raised $250,000 one year selling old cars. I mean, for this, I entered the convent. But that was how we supported our refugee program and gave people the money to get started and trained them in English and jobs and stuff. So it can't be done on the government subsidy.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
It's 1:32. And Arthur, do you have a really quick?
No, I don't have another question. I just didn't pull my hand down.
Well,
okay. Thank you all. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful program, and I'm sure our members appreciate it. And I ask all of you, get those survey responses back to me, please. Don't leave me hanging. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. God bless. Bye-bye.